Leave.
What?
Well, that was interesting. I think I'd feel rather ashamed if I were you.
Oh, fuck you too.
With 6 votes, you are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Oh, bullshit. Fuck you, you fucking ginger twat. And fuck the rest of yous too. Fuck you, Ravi. Fucking voting me off. Fucking wormy little prick. And you too, Frank. Fucking piece of shit. And you as well, Amber, you fucking whore. Just fucking wait. Just you fucking wait. I'll be fucking waiting outside. I'll be fucking waiting for yous out fucking side. Fucking daft cunts. Well, as you'll remember from all the way back in the Toy Story 2 video, just kidding, you didn't watch that. I said we'd take a look at a couple other Traveller's Tales games from the PS1 era, and seeing as we just looked at Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, which, yeah, we might as well take a look at Abugslife too. I admit I never had the same undying love for Pixar's second full-length feature that I have for Toy Story, but I still think it's one of their best. Especially with them becoming a lot more hit and miss as of late. How come Abugslife never got a sequel? The Incredibles and Finding Nemo both got sequels years later. Hell, Cars got 2. Seriously, that shit can get 2 sequels and Abugslife can't even get 1? What the fuck? Well, it may not have gotten a sequel, but it did get a game. So let's get stuck in. But before we do that,
Please, sir.
please subscribe. Please? So anyway, Abugslife was developed by Traveller's Tales and published by Sony Computer Entertainment and Disney Interactive in 1998. It was on PS1, Windows, N64, and there was also a version on Game Boy Color. Although, unlike Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, I never played it, so we won't be looking at the Game Boy version today. You play as the hapless but endearing worker Ant Flick on his quest to save his brethren from the evil Hopper and his gang of grasshoppers. But before we get into the game itself, we actually get a little training mission to show us the ropes. And is it just me, or does this guy sound a bit familiar?
Well, hello there, Flick. I learned a long time ago that the ant's most basic line of defense is your belly throw.
Well, I guess there's no better place to talk about abilities. So what exactly can Flick do? Well, he can run around and jump and defend himself by throwing berries. Because it's a well-known fact that ants have an infinite supply of berries they can just pull out of their arses and throw at anyone who fucks with them. What? You didn't know that? And holy shit, did you see that? That fucking bug just got blown to fucking smithereens. Seriously, you see body parts and blood flying all over the place. That's insane. I mean, yeah, it's just a 3D bug, but damn, imagine if that was a human enemy. Then it would be full-on gore, in a game that's rated E. Jesus. Oh, and if you don't feel like pelting them with berries, you can also drop your fat arse on them, so that's fun. Anyway, in addition to eviscerating other bugs, G-Ant also teaches you about the seeds that can be found throughout the game, and have various uses. You can pick some of these up and move them around and use them to create things like platforms to bounce and climb on to get to high places, and plants that give you health and special abilities. It's a pretty cool game mechanic that helps make for deeper gameplay than you'd expect from a game such as this. So in the first level, you've got to get to the anthill before the grasshoppers turn up. But they must be taking their sweet fucking time because you can just fuck around with this shit forever and the fuckers won't show up. And why the fuck is Dot flying? That shit's not supposed to happen until later on. So these levels are a lot more linear than what we saw in Toy Story 2. No characters defined with bullshit tasks for you to complete. And although that makes more sense from a story standpoint, I must say I did enjoy the sandbox nature of the levels in Toy Story 2, where you had to explore and find objectives to complete. But here the only objective is to make it to the end. There are a couple other things you can do. They're not essential, but you do get a couple benefits from doing them, and if you want to get as much out of the game as you can, then you might as well. There's 50 pieces of grain throughout each level, and if you collect all of them you'll be restored to full health. Pretty redundant considering you can get your health back in other ways, but whatever. And there's also the letters you can pick up to spell Flick, and if you find all of them you get another life. And while that might sound pretty simple, as you progress further you'll soon find it becomes a lot easier said than done. Now even though the combat is pretty simplistic, it does have a little more to it than I've already mentioned. You're mostly just going around lobbing berries about, but the regular berries you start with aren't enough to take out some of the stronger enemies you'll encounter. But luckily you can find different berries with different effects, like the super berry, and the homing berry, because fuck you, physics! And then the super mega homing berry. Once you get that, you can deal with just about anything that comes your way, but there's still one problem. Just cause you blew some poor little bug to bits doesn't mean that's the end for it, because the enemies respawn endlessly, and that's where the super mega ultra goldberry comes in. Ooh. If you can get your hands on that, which, again, easier said than done, but when you do, you pretty much become untouchable, then you can blow their asses to shit and the fuckers don't come back.
Ironic, isn't it? The hunter has become the hunted.
And this is another collectible. If you take out all the enemies in a level with the goldberry, you unlock an extra movie clip, which... wow. Cool. Another poor quality FMV clip to watch. Yeah. Totally worth it. Anyway, you reach the entrance to the anthill and there you go. That's the level done. You get a little summary screen of all the shit you picked up and then it's on to level 2. So now we're inside the anthill and have to get to the council chamber, which again is just a matter of following the path and making it to the end. There's a lot of paths that branch off from the main one, which can become confusing to navigate, but only if you're worried about collecting all the extra stuff. If not, then just follow the main path. About halfway through you'll start to encounter the grasshoppers who have only now decided to show up, and are mega pissed that their grain is missing. And now that I think about it, a gang of nasty arseholes extorting the poor ants out of their grain with the threat of violence, led by a charismatic but menacing leader? Man, YouTube was right. The grasshoppers really are this universe's version of the saviours from The Walking Dead, and Hopper is pretty much the Negan of the Pixar cinematic universe.
Give me your shit, or I will kill you.
Anyway, the level gets a bit harder once the grasshoppers turn up, since your regular berries are ineffective against them, meaning you either have to just run around them or find yourself some stronger berries. Which, yeah, way to piss these guys off even more. I mean, if you thought Hopper was already pissed that he's not getting his grain, how do you think he's gonna feel when he finds out you've been murdering members of his fucking gang? So you reach the end and it's on to level 3. We're at the council chamber and now have to fight the rabid grasshopper, Thumper. So the game follows the same structure as Toy Story 2. You play a few regular levels and then get a boss fight, but at least these bosses actually have something to do with the story. I mean, Flick never fought Thumper, but at least he's a character from the film, unlike in Toy Story 2 where apparently after leaving Andy's house, Buzz and the gang suddenly came under attack from some random fucking plane that was just flying around, looking for poor innocent toys to kill, or when Slimer from Ghostbusters decided to make a random cameo. But anyway, how's this boss fight? Well, it's fine I suppose. Just pretty standard really, not a lot to say. You just hit the crazy fucker with your berries until he dies. There's still grain and letters to collect as well, which isn't that hard to do considering the guy doesn't even come after you that much. He mostly just buzzes around aimlessly unless you go near him. Your regular berries don't do much damage, but you can find the stronger ones, including the gold, to do more. Anyway, you pelt the prick with berries for a while and then he dies. And not only does he die, but we also get a nice close-up shot of the poor fucker screaming in agony before being blown into a million pieces. Blood and guts and all. Yeah. Fuck. On to level 4. Flick has left the anthill on his quest to find warrior bugs to help the ants fend off the nasty grasshoppers. Although I'm not quite sure why, considering he didn't have much trouble dealing with them earlier, and that was just one ant. Imagine if they all took on the grasshoppers instead of just hiding like a bunch of pussies. Anyway, in this mission you've just got to use the Dandelion to fly across the valley without the bird eating you. Not a whole lot to say, just use the propeller plant things to keep yourself airborne until you get past the thorn bush. And then it's on to mission 5 where you've got to find your way through this maze or whatever, and it's here where the game starts to get a bit more tricky. The seeds become a lot more important now, where you're using them to get to the tops of these towers or whatever to get the letters and goldberry, and it almost becomes like a puzzle, where you have to figure out how to use the seeds to get to the top, picking them up and moving them all over the level, and it took me way longer than I care to admit to realise that you can actually throw the seeds into the propeller plants to launch them up to higher places. So let's take a closer look at the gameplay. The controls suck! They're clunky and oversensitive and they make the game a lot less fun than it should be. Basically, Flick builds momentum when he starts to move, and then loses it when he stops, which is more realistic, but also makes it harder to move with any precision, because when you do want to stop, Flick will just keep on going, which often causes you to fly off the edges of platforms or throw yourself into chasms, meaning you've got no choice but to move slow and steady half the time, and it just makes you want to bang your fucking head against the wall. But just like with Toy Story 2, the game's biggest flaw, in my opinion, is the camera. But here it's even worse. At least in Toy Story 2 you had some control over it, but here you don't. It just follows along behind you, which is fine. I mean, that's what it's supposed to do in these sorts of games. But then you'll turn a corner or change direction, and then you've got to wait a second for the thing to get its fucking arse in gear and follow you, so you can't tell where you're going or what you're doing. Meaning there'll be times where you'll be edging your way around corners during some of the platforming sections, and then you're having to sit and wait for the camera to catch up, and you can't see if there's an enemy there or if you're about to throw yourself over a fucking edge, and it just makes it all a lot more annoying than it has to be. Why couldn't they have just added some buttons to turn the camera manually when you need to? What the fuck? It's also at about this time you'll probably notice another feature. Well, not really a feature, but definitely something that deserves mention. You see, much like Buzz in Toy Story, Flick will talk to himself over the course of his journey, but rather than just spout random voice clips from the films without context, this is actually original dialogue that fits in with what's going on. Flick's dialogue changes with each mission, and he even has specific lines for various situations, such as the individual enemies that he encounters, so that's a cool little detail that helps to make the game feel more alive and fun to play. Or it would be. But there's just one teeny tiny problem. He won't shut the fuck up! Seriously, it's fucking constant! I mean, in Toy Story 2, Buzz might have said something maybe like once a minute, and it might have gotten annoying at times, but it's even worse here! Here, Flick will say something like every 30 seconds or so, and it might not have been quite so bad if he had more unique things to say, but he just has the same couple lines per level, so inevitably you're just gonna hear him repeat the same shit over and over again, and it drives you fucking nuts!
Am I there yet?
Does it look like you're there yet, you annoying little fuck?
This isn't all it was cracked up to be.
You've said that 10 fucking times now! Have you not got out else to say it?
Crossing the riverbed.
God, shut up!
Big red rock.
Nice big cock.
So anyway, once you reach the end of the maze, that's the level done, and it's on to level 6. And we've got ourselves another boss fight, this time with the bird that was chasing you in level 4. Now to be honest, there's actually a bit more going on here than in the previous fight, since in order to kill this fucking thing, you first have to get to it. So first you find all the blue tokens so you can grow the plant that gives you the super jump ability, and then use that to climb the ledges around the arena. And this is where the controls and camera really start to become a pain, because you're having to run and jump over to the platforms in the middle, but because you can't control the camera, it's hard to see where the fuck you're jumping, so half the time you just end up back at the bottom again. But anyway, once you get under the bird, you can get this thing, which I guess is supposed to help you, but it didn't work, so I said fuck that and just lobbed a few gold berries at it, which worked just fine. And I know I can't be the only one to be extremely disappointed that the bird just flies away instead of exploding in a shower of blood and guts. I mean, come on! I thought these developers had some balls. Apparently not. So now it's time for level 7. We've finally reached the big city. And then do what we all do the first time we arrive in a new city. Start murdering the locals. But anyway, our objective here is to find some of the circus bugs. Again, it gets a bit more tricky, but only if you're worried about collecting everything. If not, then you've just got to get to the end, which again is just a matter of following the path. Mission 8's mostly the same. You've just got to find the other members of the troop scattered throughout the level. If you want to collect stuff, then you've got to mess around with the seeds to get the super jump again, so you can get up high, as Flick will regularly remind you, but it's not hard to find the other bugs. So even though they're pretty straightforward, I do like the level design. They do a good job of recreating the scenes from the film, and while most have you doing pretty much the same thing, each felt distinct enough that I didn't feel that the game was being overly repetitive, although a lot of this is due to the fact that I took the time to collect stuff. If you were to just go down the main path and get the levels over with as quickly as possible, I think they would feel a lot more boring and repetitive. Now it's time for another boss fight. We're inside a rolling can or whatever and have to fight this fly guy. Now in terms of concept, this is a pretty good fight. I mean, you have to fight this guy inside this can, all while avoiding the obstacles that are flying around all over the place, and do damage if they touch you, and it's pretty cool visually, but in terms of execution, not so much. Once again, the controls and camera turn what should have been a fun and challenging boss fight into another load of annoying bullshit. Basically, you've got to run up and down this can, chasing this fucker around while avoiding all the shit in your way, but because the camera's so fucking awkward and delayed, it's hard to time your movements to avoid getting hit by something, because half the time you can barely see what's going on around you, and I ended up wasting so many fucking lives on a level that should have been relatively simple. And that brings me to another thing I hate about this game. When you lose all your lives, it does the same shit as fucking Toy Story. Rather than make you start the level again with a couple fresh lives, it kicks you back to the opening menu, and then you have to load the game again, after sitting through the fucking intros, which you can't skip, mercifully, but it's still annoying. And not only that, but when you do load the game again, it starts you off with no lives. So if you get one game over, then it's easy to get another one, and then another one, and every time it gets more and more annoying until you just want to stick your fucking head in a blender. But anyway, on to level 10. We're back on Ant Island and have to find the pieces of the mechanical bird to scare the grasshoppers away. There's 5 pieces to find, and once you do, there you go, that's the level done. I like that in the second half of the game, the levels become a bit more open and give more reason to explore, rather than being just a straight run to the end. I really like the graphics. Just like with Toy Story 2, they do a good job of capturing the look of the film. They're nice and colourful, and the character models are well detailed. I also like the music. It has a lot of character and really adds to the atmosphere, while fitting in nicely with the level design. My favourites are the tracks from when you're on Ant Island, particularly inside the anthill. It was done by the same guys who did the music for Toy Story 2, which I also liked, so it's no surprise they did a good job here as well. In level 11 you've got to find all the ant scouts or whatever they are so they can pilot the bird. Not a lot to say here, but holy shit, you can actually use Flick's machine? I didn't know you could do that. I've been seeing that fucking thing lying around all over the place. I never realised you could actually do anything with it. Damn! So anyway, if you pick up Flick's grain collecting machine thingamajig, it essentially becomes another version of the Goldberry. So you can just go around grinding up enemies and they don't come back. The only problem is that you move slow with it, so apart from the joke of it, there's not much point. So anyway, you climb the tree, avoid the rolling acorns, find the scouts, get to the top, and there you go. And now it's time for another boss fight in level 12. We're fighting Molt this time. And up until this point, the game, it had its problems, it's got flaws. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it was decent enough. But here? Here is where it all goes downhill. So this fight's pretty much the same as the one with Thumper. The daft fucker just runs around aimlessly unless you go near him, and you just pelt him with your berries. The problem is your regular berries barely make a dent in his health, but to get stronger ones you've got to fuck around with the seeds and shit, and it just becomes way more annoying than it needs to be. One of the things you need to get the gold berries right above where Molt's running around, so you can barely get near it without the fucker hitting you all over. And then when you finally do get it, you've got all the other ants throwing the standard red berries at you. And if you pick one up by accident, then you lose the gold berry, and have to fuck around again to get it back. So you beat Molt, but guess what? The game's still not over because now it's on to level 13. Hopper's got Atta and you need to save her. And by this point, I was pretty much done with this game. It started out okay, but the flaws just wore me down to the point where I couldn't wait for it to be over. So anyway, you've got to rescue Atta from Hopper, but they're all the way up in the air, so what the fuck are you supposed to do? Well, you've actually got to grow yourself a cannon plant. Yeah, there's something I never thought I'd say, and then use that to blast the fucker. So again, you've got to fuck around with the seeds, some of which are being carried by grasshoppers who are also flying around, so you've got to shoot them with cannon plants as well. And while I do think this was a good game mechanic, by this point it had gotten old. Picking up these fucking seeds and moving them around the fucking level, which takes ages because you move slow when you're carrying them, and then you've got to get more and throw them into the propeller plants to get them up to high places, and I could just not be arsed anymore. Maybe if they found a way for it to be quicker and less irritating, it wouldn't get quite as bad, but unfortunately no. So you rescue Atta from Hopper and it's on to mission 14. Oh my god, how much more of this is left? And, oh, well, this is different. So this is kind of like an on-rails bit. You're controlling Atta who's carrying Flick as they try to escape from Hopper. You can still have Flick throw berries at enemies, and it's just a matter of avoiding obstacles and making it to the end, while staying ahead of Hopper. This seemed like a pretty good idea. A cool new concept to help break up some of the repetitiveness and remedy the annoyance of the previous couple levels. But, you know what I'm gonna say. They fucked it up. The flaws that I've already mentioned make what should have been a fun level into another load of fucking shite. You can't stop and the controls are way too sensitive, so you're just constantly crashing into shit and getting stuck, while moving so fast that it's hard to avoid the enemies that just pop up in your path. And then it doesn't take much for Hopper to catch up with you, and then he hits you all over, and you just die and die and die. And once again I had no fucking lives left, so every time I did die I got fucking game over, and had to reload the whole fucking game again. And even with all this going on, they still have the fucking nerve to have fucking grain and letters for you to collect. Like I'm gonna go round and round just to collect all this shit. Fuck that. I'm fucking done. So anyway, you get to the end of that shit and then it's time for the final level. Jesus Christ, fucking finally. Now we're fighting Hopper and have to get him to the bird's nest. As he loses health, he moves closer to the nest. But of course your regular berries barely tickle the fucker, so you've got to get stronger. But instead of fucking around with the seeds and shit, just get the super berry, and that's enough to hurt the guy. Yeah, fuck the grain, fuck the letters, fuck the goldberry, even though I did actually manage to get it. Just hit the motherfucker as much as you can so you can get him into the nest, so these little fuckers can chow down on his ass. And there you go, done. The grasshoppers are gone, the ants live happily ever after, and... yay! So that's Abugslife on PS1, and in conclusion, you know, this really was a shame, because it actually started pretty well and had some good ideas, but in the end the flaws really dragged it down and made it a lot less fun and a lot more annoying than it could have been, particularly in the second half. It's a good looking game. I love the graphics, the character models, the music and the level design, but the controls are awkward and clunky, the camera's a total piece of shit, the good ideas it did have eventually become tired and boring, and it all just makes the game a lot less enjoyable than it had the potential to be. Thankfully the developers seem to learn from their mistakes, and the gameplay in Toy Story 2, while still having some of the same flaws, was a lot better and more fun, so you should probably just stick with that one and give this one a miss. And now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to reenact another of my favourite bug-themed movies. Hey, you made it to the end!
Congratulations, Sonny. You've earned a toffee.
Thank you for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, then please like and subscribe. If you didn't, or if Abugslife was your favourite game growing up and you feel like I just shot your dog, then tell me to go fuck myself. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again.